But I love it, especially my big girls. Big girls, let me tell you something, man. This is from the heart, too. I love y'all. Y'all love and support y'all men. So, look, man, don't let nobody knock y'all off y'all hustle, body shame you, none of that. You heard? Y'all got some of the prettiest feet in the game, too.
Hello. Welcome to season 2, episode 2 of Black Girl Blueprint to Maternal Health, a series brought to you by Revive Community Health Center and Black Millennials for Flint. I am your host, Catrina Tillman, Executive Director at Revive Community Health Center, located right here in Flint, Michigan. We are excited about tonight's episode. I'm excited that you all could be here with us. Don't forget to comment, share this so we can help get this much needed information out. Tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about in thickness and in health. Yes, in thickness and in health. BBW and birthing. We have some amazing experts here with us on this topic. And so I'm going to pause and let them go ahead and introduce themselves. We'll start with Raven. Hey, how are you?
Hi, I'm well. Thanks for inviting me here to have this conversation with you. So my name is Raven. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a healing justice practitioner and someone who works in the policy arena. I have experience as a birth doula and a postpartum doula. I'm an abortion doula who trains abortion doulas. And I am a queer person who is trying to conceive. So though I have not experienced birth or pregnancy, living as a BBW, as we're using today, really informs the healthcare that I get. So I'm excited to have this conversation.
Absolutely. We're so glad to have you join us. Next, we're going to go over to Shannon. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. So I'm Shannon. My pronouns are she and her. I'm not an expert in all of the things that Raven is, but I am a mother. I have given birth to 2 people in 2 different states in kind of 2 different time periods. So I have a 6-year-old, and I also gave birth earlier this year. And so have had very traumatic experiences both times. So happy to have this conversation as well.
Great. I'm so excited that you all could take the time out to have this conversation with us and with our audience here on Black Girl Blueprint to Maternal Health. We like to position ourselves to educate women in our audience, especially women of color, regarding all things maternal health. And so we're really excited to have both of you join us. Just for context, for those that don't know, a lot of times in this space, we use a lot of acronyms and A, B, C, D, E, F, Gs. And as an audience, I just want to make sure that you are well versed and a part of the conversation and not like, what are they talking about? So BBW stands for Big Beautiful Woman. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about that along with maternal health. So let's go ahead and just jump right into the conversation. There's a special type of hatred towards Black women called misogynoir. A term coined by Moya Bailey, an assistant professor in the Department of Culture, Society, and Global Studies, and the program in Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies at Northeastern University. Misogynoir means the ways anti-Black and misogynistic representation shape broader ideas about Black women. Tonight, we will be talking about how misogynoir and fatphobia, hatred, and discrimination against plus-size people create a major challenge for many Black childbirthing people. This is a real thing, okay? Speaking from your experiences, from the Black childbirthing experiences and working with plus size, or as we're calling it today, BBWs, what are some specific challenges you can describe in detail based off your personal experiences? And we can just do popcorn style.
Okay, I'll go. So I thought about this question a lot. So as I mentioned before, I've given birth twice. And both of those experiences were traumatic in very different ways. So thinking about the first one, so I was in my late 20s, and I didn't have any health issues. So it was a pretty uncomplicated pregnancy, but a very complicated birth. And so I would say that in the first pregnancy, there was kind of an emotional toll, and then towards the birthing experience, a physical toll. So like I said, I was 27. I didn't have any health issues. I was relatively in shape. So the pregnancy was pretty boring. I didn't experience a lot with my doctors. And I did have a very interesting experience with the ultrasound tech. I actually ended up having to complain and write a formal letter because she was discriminatory. It was a very terrible experience. I went in to get my anatomy scan actually, and she was openly hostile. There's no other word. She was very hostile. As soon as I came into the space, she asked me why I was seeing her and not at the high risk center, which was like 2 floors up, which I was not a high risk pregnancy. And so I told her I'm not high risk. And she was complaining that it was going to take too much physical effort for her to press down onto my belly to see the baby. She was just like, you have to be high risk. I'm telling her, I'm telling you, I'm not. Have you taken the diabetes test? Yes, I'm not diabetic. I don't have preeclampsia. Why are you asking me these questions? You're not even my doctor, right? And so it kind of turned into a whole thing. I started crying because I was being harassed while I'm trying to figure out the gender. And I ended up going to see my doctor right after that. They saw that I was crying, saw that there was an issue, but no one said anything about it. They were just like, oh, okay, and left. And before I was able to call back, the lady complained, tried to preemptively complain and say that the pressure that she had to press on my belly sprained her wrist. And she tried to get disability and all of these things before I was able to complain. I ended up filing a complaint and doing all those things. So that was one story. At the end of that pregnancy, similar to what happens to Black women all the time, I got an epidural. It was put in the wrong position. I communicated that it was in the wrong position. They told me that I'm feeling pressure and not pain. And that, they kept telling me to push the pain button. I was telling them it wasn't working. So I ended up, I was in labor for 19 hours with an epidural in the wrong place. So all of the pain was in one spot in my back. Also, like they do Black women, I ended up having to get an emergency C-section. And it wasn't until I was literally on the table about to be cut open that the anesthesiologist noticed that I was crying in pain in alignment with when contractions were coming. And so he made everyone stop talking because everyone was, kikiing, talking, doing whatever they were doing. He went around to the front of me with a scalpel and ran it across where the incision would be. And he said, "Can you feel that?" And I told him, "Yes, I can feel that." And then he had to stop everyone and say, "I have to look at this because if we cut her open, I don't know what's going to happen." They weren't paying attention. He looked and was like, "Oh, it's in the wrong place." And he had to fix it literally on the operating table. So that's just one of the stories that I've experienced.
Ooh, child. First of all, my God. Wow. First, thank you for sharing that, because it's so important that we hear the raw reality of what women are experiencing, especially Black women in this space. And it's the audacity for me. There's no other way I can professionally, it's the audacity for me. the fact that you want to go and complain that your wrist is injured simply from doing your job. I hope she got fired. No, she didn't. That doesn't surprise me.
I just went to another doctor.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me either. That's so unfortunate that you had to experience something of that magnitude. And thank God that the anesthesiologist was able to stop the surgery before it actually happened, because ladies and gentlemen, a C-section is surgery. It's, I think sometimes we forget that it's like a major surgery, right? And so, wow, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but I'm glad that you are able to be on this side and express what happened. And hopefully this conversation will help others in that space. Raven, did you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you, Shannon, for being willing to share your experience with us. I think that experience in the story, the retelling of that story, is enough in itself to highlight all the ways that medical systems can be really punitive to Black bodies and Black birthing people and Black women. And so I appreciate that this question is that it is offered with the context of misogynoir, because misogynoir itself is something that upholds patriarchal violence, and what Shannon talked about is violence to your own body. And so like we can see how things that are like systemic, though we may experience them at like a macro level, we're actually living that stuff in our body, and people are behaving in a way that enforces violence. And so a lot of my experiences around supporting people through childbirth who have different bodies, like, bigger bodies, bodies of different abilities, is just thinking about what space is made in the actual birthing places. And this is hospitals, this is birthing centers, and how those things may differ in what they're prepared to accept. Right? And so the education and training of our medical providers lends to violence. The way that the room is set up and what is available to us, it lends to violence. It is all meant to exclude what is not desirable, and fatness is not desirable in a medical system, especially the bodies of Black women, because they don't have utility to someone else. And until your body has utility, they won't see you as someone who is worthy of comfort, of care, of attention. And so I'm really thankful that the anesthesiologist paused and said, okay, we need to see Shannon in her personhood, the dignity of just her body, and how do we provide comfort and care to that. So, I'm just thinking about the challenges that come with, making sure that you have a doctor who recognizes that we can be healthy at any size, or that we are deserving of care and attention about what our body's experiencing, despite what they may see of our bodies. And that we don't have to have bodies that are seen as desirable or useful to any system of whiteness in order for it to get the care that it deserves. That's what resonated with me from this question.
Yeah, that's so true. Wow, that was a great contribution. So despite sizes 16 to 18 being the true average women's size in the US, the healthcare industry is still calling us fat. Body mass index, or BMI, has been historically and currently a racist description of body weight that more than often not creates a medically supported stereotypical narrative about plus-sized childbirthing people. According to a fairly recent article in Vice, it was stated that BMI is an imperfect way of examining someone's health. It doesn't take into consideration muscle mass, nor does it make a distinction between metabolically unhealthy and metabolically healthy fat people who do not experience health issues typically associated with being fat. Okay, like the whole BMI thing, in my personal opinion, throw it out. Throw it out. As plus size Black people are navigating the childbirthing experience, what are some self-advocacy strategies you would provide to fight against radical or racial and weight discrimination, to ensure they are receiving high quality maternal health care?
Okay, I'll go again. So as I mentioned, I had a child at the beginning of this year. And so I took some things that I learned. One of the most practical things that I experienced this time was I went to an individual doctor versus a collective of doctors. So the first time it was whoever was going to be on call, whoever was available in the office, I saw whoever. And so I was kind of, my level of care was up to the mercy of who was on the schedule for the day. And that felt a little too random for me. So this time I went to an individual doctor. I specifically was looking for a Black woman who could provide me with the care that I needed. I wasn't able to get a Black woman because she was booked in the office, but I was able to get a woman of color. And the first thing I told her, the moment I walked in, I told her the same birthing story I told you all. And I said, I'm not interested in doing that again. I need you to be able to listen to me when I say that I'm in pain. I need you to listen to me when I'm telling you that I'm okay or I'm not. And I'm not interested in having any conversations that are about my weight that has nothing to do with this baby. Like, if that's not something you're going to be able to provide me, I need to know now, because I will not experience what I experienced the first time. She was a little taken aback when I had that conversation, but she was like, I hear you. That sounds terrible. And I'm sorry. Now, she wasn't the best. She had her own fat phobic issues that kind of showed up later. But I did feel comfortable at least getting to the point where I can say what it is up front. And so now, after I've had the baby, I finally have an OBGYN who is body affirming, and she is a Black woman, and we've had the conversation, and she listens to me. And so I just feel like every time I personally have felt more comfortable advocating for myself, as a person who has been in a big body my whole life. There's kind of, especially when it comes to doctors, there's kind of a separation of like, I don't know my body. I haven't been living it. I'm just going to listen to you. I'm also, as a bigger person, wanting to take up as least space as possible. And so I'm not going to say anything. And I felt like having those experiences has allowed me to take up more space, get bigger, because it is my body. And that has helped me find not just a maternal, like not just an OBGYN, my general doctor, my dermatologist, even, we have these conversations. And yeah, it's just because I have to be the one to advocate for.
Yeah, I agree. Being able to advocate for yourself is so important, not just, like you say, not just with your health, but like you say, everything, your hair, your nail tech, everybody needs to know how you feel when it comes to how you want to look, your health, and all of those things. Go ahead, Raven.
Yeah, so I'll just add in like appreciating what Shannon shared about like having that conversation up front and establishing like, this is what it looks like to care for me and my body, but care for me as a whole person, right? So as someone who is on a journey with my wife to conceive, we have to have a lot more medical and interventions, and this is this can be common for couples, regardless of your sexual orientation, if you have to address any fertility challenges or issues. And so, this has really led us to think about how do we like actually establish our own healthcare team. And so I'm more interested in, having just as Shannon said, doctors and dentists who understand that there are things that I'm willing to do and there are things that I'm not willing to do. What has helped me a lot is getting onto, some of these platforms like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram and looking for communities of people who have similar experiences, and learning to seek out providers who have that healthy at every size mentality. It's HAES is what you may see online, right? And so knowing that there may be a provider who is willing to not, take your weight every time that you come in. I'll say for the pregnancy and childbirth journey, something that I share with a lot of my clients and the families that I'm supporting is to think about how we internalize fat phobia and how we may internalize that our bodies are not desirable. And so we will avoid discovering and getting to know and having an actual relationship with our body. So it's important to have a relationship with your chest and your breast and your stomach and your thighs and your feet. And especially during that pregnancy journey, because you want to think about the places where you may be retaining water, and that leads to an increase in your weight. And that's the utility of taking a number. But you should be able to go into a doctor's office and say, I'm retaining water in these areas at this rate. Regardless of what you thought of the number that I had when I walked in here, this is a cause for us to have a deeper conversation, right? So I think that first step in self-advocacy is just knowing your body, knowing what's there. Where are their bumps? Where are their curves? Where is their tenderness? Where is their toughness? And how can you communicate to that to folks up front, just like Shannon helped us to see and understand?
I will say, if I can just circle back, one thing about like knowing your body is very important as a large person carrying a child, because doctors, and especially if they're not a doctor who subscribes to HAES, are thinking about a fat body as inherently defective. So it's an emotional toll, it's a physical toll, it's also a financial burden, because what I experienced the second time around, being a little older, it was like, oh, we're going to give you every single test, every single intervention. We're going to, you need to pay for this. You need to pay for this. If you don't do this, with that, your babies could be stillbirth, all of these unnecessary interventions that are, emotionally taxing because it's a lot of work, but it's also, there's like very real financial violence that I experienced the second time around, because there were things that we did not need. And it becomes very difficult. Like, yes, I've advocated for myself, go me, but it's also like, that's a very taxing thing to do, to go up against someone who's gone through all of these years of experience, and they're looking at you like, where did you get your information from? Google? Like, you don't know. And so like, I do want to say that is a very large part of a very difficult thing to do, and like recognizing that it is very hard to advocate for yourself in medical space.
Yeah, that financial burden, like you say, that's just another added layer, unnecessary added layer of discrimination, of, like you said, financial abuse. Like it's okay. Doctors often push overweight pregnant people towards C-sections rather than vaginal births, warn of dangerous conditions such as preeclampsia or gestational diabetes, or encourage weight loss during pregnancy. This advice is given despite the fact that the majority of overweight pregnant people give birth without complications. Share your thoughts about this frequency occurrence in maternal health care, and why it is so important to hold healthcare professionals, as we discussed a little bit earlier. Why is it so important to hold healthcare professionals accountable for these acts of violence against plus-sized Black women?
Yeah, I'm happy to start here. The first thing that I think about with this question is like the implications on policy and the implications on practices within hospitals. So when we do not, when we don't address and acknowledge the ways that medical systems cause us pain, discomfort, trauma, the ways that they enact violence, it continues to attest that their norm is good enough for us. And so it is really important to find a way to express, well, first, whatever you have experienced in your own gestational journey, to heal through that through therapy or through a support group or with your own kinfolk and community. But secondly, then to find a way to circle back to that and help people to see and acknowledge what they created for you and against your body, right? So if we are not talking about the ways that we're hurt, if we're not talking about the ways that we're harmed, those standards of practice become their norms. And some of those norms are actually very different from what their policies will state. So their policies are supposed to be equitable, they're supposed to live up to the standards of practice, and they don't. And so when we really prioritize helping people to see how they rob us of dignified care, then they have to be accountable, right? They have to face and acknowledge those things. So I think we really have to do that for each other, because if I was in community with Shannon, then I would want to think about, well, where was that, and how do I tell other people, like, this is not a provider that we want to go to, right? This provider is someone who creates conditions of harm for Black birthing people and Black mamas, and that is not acceptable.
Completely agree. Not acceptable. Shannon, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, because I had 2 C-sections. So, I remember there was a documentary, I think it was called The Business of Being Born. And it talks about kind of like the spiral of interventions, right? When I went in to give birth the first time, I was definitely on the crunchy vibes. Like, I wanted to be in the water and like a fairy and all the things, right? But when I got there, right, my birthing plan went out of the window because it wasn't because there was necessarily a medical reason. It felt very much like the hospital would like me to move on to the next step and get out of the birthing bed so that you can go to the recovery. And so I had to push back even like in the middle of labor, because they were trying to like, let's just do a C-section. You're going to have a big baby. Like, you have to have had a big baby because you're a fat person, right? And so like the baby's not going to fit. And so it was actually me and the nurse who had to like hold the doctor off and be like, let's give her a chance to try to birth. But then the doctor was like, nope, you're going to get on Pitocin because it's not happening fast enough. And then Pitocin happened. And then the next step was an epidural because, no, there was Pitocin. Then they put, I don't know what it's called, but they put the monitor that monitors the contractions. Instead of the belt, they put it in me. And so then I was stuck on the bed with this painful thing inside me with Pitocin. So then the next step was, okay, epidural, because I'm literally like chained to the bed. And then from there, the Pitocin plus the epidural, plus it being in the wrong place, plus the doctor coming back every 15 minutes, like, are you ready for a C-section yet? Eventually I was just like, yeah, I'm ready for a C-section. Let's just do it. And that is how it happened for me. And then when it came time for the second baby, my doctor, because I had already had a C-section, was absolutely not willing to even consider me having a vaginal birth after the C-section. So my second child was scheduled like when I was maybe 4 or 5 months. So it kind of was like a spiral situation. And I had to kind of, like Raven said, I had to sit with the original birth not going the way that I wanted it to. And like, that was very difficult for me the first time around. So that by the time I made it to the second, when I mentioned it to my doctor and she was like, absolutely not, I was just like, okay, well, I've already done this before. I know what this surgery is like, and I just got to do what I got to do. So.
Oh, I'm over here straight attitude, because again, it is the audacity, it is feeling like you have no say-so over your body, over how you would like your child to enter into this world. And it's not a life-threatening situation where it's like, we have to take the baby now, just to completely disregard your previous experiences and to just, make a decision for you and say, no, we're not going to do it. We're going to do it this way. You're going to have to deal with it. That is just, it's unfortunate. But again, to our viewers, this is real. And this happens. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands of these stories that are very similar, and it happens more often than you think. So again, I hope you guys are commenting and sharing this live as you guys are watching it, just if nothing else, to help get the information out, to help build the awareness of what is going on in this particular space regarding maternal health. Oh, Jesus, I feel like we just need to have a woosah moment. All right, so in comparison to white women, Black women are the most impacted by climate change in the nation, and the most housed in homes built before 1978, which makes them more susceptible to exposure to lead poisoning. Despite these societal ills, healthcare providers, both in maternal health and reproductive health, half of the 20 largest fertility clinics in the United States refuse to perform in vitro fertilization on individuals who are extremely or severely obese, as determined by those three letters, BMI. While lead exposure causes infertility challenges, doctors also often push large pregnant people towards C-sections rather than, as we just heard, vaginal births, warn of dangerous conditions such as preeclampsia and gestational diabetes. So what are some tools we can equip our Black moms and dads to fight for the best birthing plans for safe deliveries for mommies and babies?
Yeah, so I can speak to preparing up front for some of the challenges, just from being someone who has accompanied people through the birth process, and through their the realities of pregnancy and gestation, and all outcomes. And so, as I have to navigate fertility clinics and reproductive specialists for IUI and IVF, some of the things that my wife and I have had conversations about are, what's the information we need to have before we go in the door. And so we won't really enter into a medical provider space until we have done some of our own research. I think something that we all have to face is that the medical industrial complex will say that the provider has the most authority because they have the most knowledge. Or we make an assumption that they have the most knowledge. But I like to ask folks, what is your training in birthing babies in different positions, right? Because in our medical school, people do not practice birthing or catching babies with folks on all fours or anything other than being on your back, which we know is uncomfortable and not the best position for labor. And so, I think that the tool that we can all use is just being willing to challenge that status quo, that this provider has the most information, they have the most knowledge. And I like to ask, what is your knowledge? What is your training around this? How do you support people who, are of, this weight range? Or what is your opinion on the way that people of higher BMIs receive care? What have you done about that? You can interview your providers. Just because you have a body does not mean that person needs to touch or care for your body. So the best tool that I've really used is preparing myself with knowledge. And then I'll also just add, even thinking about, again, Shannon, your experience, there are apps that help us to know the ratings of hospitals, right? So the Earth app is a really good tool that we have now, that we can use to find a doctor who is most affirming to our needs if they are available. I heard you, Shannon. You went for who you wanted and they weren't available. But I'll wrap that up with those are some of the tools that I would use.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the things that I wish I would have done both times was to get outside support from a doula. I had made the assumption that they were expensive and that it was just like not something for me. And I feel like not having like a person who knew about the process, and also specifically a doula who was used to working with fat folk or had experience with that, I just felt very alone, just like I was out on my own. I was at the mercy of these doctors. I was the mercy of the hospital and my family loved them, but they also they didn't know what was happening. They were having conversations apparently in the hallway, like, is she going to die? What's going on? So they were not very helpful. Love them. So I wish I would have had that. And I also think thinking about what medical support looks like for a person with a larger body, it is usually, at least for me, it has been a traumatic experience all around. And so what my initial kind of disposition when it comes to medical doctors was that I'm very passive, and whatever is going to happen is just going to happen to me. And I'm not going to reach out and offer any support, get any support, because in the back of my mind, I feel like I don't deserve it because society has showed me that I don't, right? And so things were just happening to me. And I think there are people there who can help and are willing to. It takes a little work to find them. And I really wish that I would have known about that to be able to get that support as well.
Yeah, I think that, both of you all made such a great point. And I just want to make sure that we highlight one of the things that you all said, that it's okay to interview your physicians. You don't necessarily have to go with, a lot of times we find our physicians by either referral or word of mouth, like, hey, do you have a good OB doctor? And then it may be a good OB doctor for your cousin or for your best friend or for your auntie, but your situation or your experience may be something completely different. And I think that that's something that we don't necessarily in our culture, we don't necessarily think to do in terms of interviewing people that are servicing us. I went to a conference this summer, and there was a panelist. It was regarding maternal and infant health. And one of the doctors on the panel said something that was so simplistic, but yet profound. And what she said was, you as the patient, you're the expert of your body. And that's just the honest to God truth. Yes, they have done hours upon hundreds of hours of clinical work and papers and studies and all of these different things. And we're thankful for that, right? However, when it comes to your body, you're the expert. You know what you feel. You may not know the technical term for it, or you may not know, the medicine to aid it. But if I tell you that I feel a lot of pressure and pain in my lower abdomen, that's what I feel, and I think that it's so important for providers to, number one, take diversity training, number one. Number two, also, being able to communicate to patients, as I like to say, on an elementary level. I think that's another area of lack of communication. These doctors, they come into the room and they tell you all of this stuff, and it's like they're using syllables that, words that have 22 syllables. And it's like, make it make sense. Okay, what exactly are you saying to me about my body? Because again, me being the expert, I need to be also informed from your expertise of what you're seeing or what you're getting ready to diagnose. But it's also important for physicians to hear the patient, and I just think that that's so important. And I feel that that's a component that is missing in this space, aside from the diversity training, which is very much needed, but then also being able to listen to patients and really take their concerns into consideration. There's no way, Chanon, that you should have had a second experience with the second doctor after you've already told them of the first experience. So for that doctor not to work out for you, it's nerve-wracking, just in hearing it. But I digress off my soapbox. All right, this has been a great conversation. So last question, in the words of Professor Drake, shout out to Drake, just in case he may be watching this. You never know. In the words of Drake, I like my girls, BBW. How can we encourage all people to stand up and love big, Black, and beautiful women in thickness and in health, and declare the right Black woman and childbearing people to have stress-free births? What is some advice that you all could give to our viewers or those that may be watching this in the future?
Yeah, I would say, with all of it, it's to see people as not as like a full person, right? Like a sum of their parts. Like yes, I am a BBW, sure, but I'm also like a person who like lives in the world and has feelings, and like all of these things feel very like, it's very strange if we have to say the thing, right? But like, we're all people we're spirits who have different bodies that are taking us through life, right? And so if we're loving each other on a spiritual level, on an energetic level, like my body can change, anyone's body can change, but we're recognizing each other in our personhood and our spirit, everyone has a right to be free. And it's odd, right? Especially as Black folk, to be like separating, okay, we like these Black people, like these Black people matter, but like not those, right? Or like those, and like, or like just this fat woman because she's my mom, but like the rest of you, I don't care about you. Like it's just a very weird cognitive dissonance thing that we do that doesn't make sense to me. So love me for me as a full being, or as a spirit with this body carrying me through life.
I love that. Girl, you need to put that on a t-shirt. No, don't tweet it, because that's a whole nother Oprah show. We're not tweeting. But no, that's an amazing analogy. Go ahead, Raven.
Yes, I loved everything that you said, Chanon. And I'm also sad that we can't tweet anymore. I would also say, if Drake is watching this, do you like your girls BBW? Because I'm really curious. And if you could post on Instagram, the girls who are BBW that you love, that would be great. So, the thing that I think about is just creating for yourself a community of people who look like you, embrace you, following along with their journey. Social media does so much for us. And even outside of that, like, what are the communities of care that can really hold BBW folks in that spirit of dignity that Chanon is talking about? And be really mindful, like question your own internalized fat phobia, question reasons why you don't feel desirable, question your relationship with your body. And as you do that, as you strengthen that for yourself, then we're all much more able to see each other as loving spirits having a human experience in different types of bodies. And that is, that's the goal.
I'll say last thing too, for our big girls and our big boys and our big siblings, take up the space, right? We're so always trying to close it up. You've got to take up the space, because once you start taking up the space, people make room for you. And the people who want to be in that space with you come there. And so that is the lesson that I have learned and has helped me, not just in medical space, but work, personal, fun, judgment, all of the things has been when I have decided to take up the space that this body wants to take up, both physically and spiritually.
I love that. I love that, because here's the thing. Fat, little, skinny, big, thick, however you want to put it. Everybody's not your person. Everybody, I'm not for everybody. And so I love that you said, take up the space that you own, that you have liberty to take it. And guess what? The people that are either assigned to you or the people who get you, it's like a magnet, like they'll come, you don't necessarily have to do that. And even when it comes to this space in terms of your healthcare, it's just that we have to do that extra step. We have to go the extra mile. We have to start interviewing and asking questions. And, hey, before my first appointment, can I meet with you? I've had some different experiences, and I would like to meet with you to get a better understanding of your style of or approach, to healthcare, and making a educated decision from that versus just going along with any referrals that we have. Also contact your insurance and get a list. That's something that I do, open enrollment. If I'm looking to change my doctor, I'll make a list of doctors that are accepting my insurance and start making those calls, and you'll be able to tell, for some people are wolf in sheep clothing, but for the most part, at least you are taking that stance, that initiative to do the research and to find out who would be best for you and servicing you and your health. Because here's the thing, guys, we only get one body, right? And so we want to make sure that we align ourselves with the proper physicians that can help us in that space, especially when we're talking about bringing another little soul or another little spirit into this world. So, well, I want to, as we wrap up, I would like to thank our panelists for sharing your wisdom tonight and your experiences and testimonies and all the things. We really appreciate both of you all being so candid and open about your own personal experience. To learn more about the services at Revive, we're located downtown Flint, Michigan. We service expecting mothers in the Flint and Genesee County to help debunk the current maternal infant mortality rate in Flint and Genesee County. So please check us out on Facebook and at our website, revivechc.org. Any final thoughts that you all have or want to share really quick? You guys good?
Just appreciate the space.
Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate both of you all. Again, to our viewers, thank you. Thank you for taking the time out to listen to this conversation. Hopefully it moved you in some type of way. Hopefully you all shared this to help spread the awareness. Check us out next month, our next month episode of Black Girl Blueprint to Maternal Health, where we will be discussing pregnant pause. Motherhood after 35. And as always, please share this episode with a friend and continue to engage with our core key partners, Black Millennials for Flint. Y'all make sure y'all check them out. Revive and our guest speakers. Please be sure to follow up and follow them as well. And we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Be sure to check us out. Thank you and good night.